bring you some practical gifts that'll help you to get the job done. During this engaging conversation packed with stories from the trenches of real life, you're going to be inspired. I know I'm inspired by Nancy. I've been inspired by Nancy for almost 2 decades. We're going to share your message. We're going to share how you can take your message virtually with podcast and radio hosting, and how you can help yourself to work with other people to influence what you're doing and inspire them even more than ever before, especially while you're sheltering in place. We're going to help you to shift gears to meet new and urgent needs in the marketplace and in your own family, and help you to produce tools and resources to guide others to navigate epic times and to take advantage of practical gifts you can access right now to support your progress. We're going to share our Sizzling speaker sheet gift template that Nancy has created for all to have, and also the Get Your Act Together Getting Started template. These are 2 phenomenal tools that Nancy has come up with over the years. And at the end of this interview, we're going to put links on the chat box so that you can access this information. So I would like to start off today by introducing Nancy more officially, and then I'll share with you a little bit how I've known Nancy over the years. So Nancy is no stranger to pivoting and preparing to prosper during challenging times. When the Great Recession hit, her public relations firm crashed. She was forced to find a new way to serve quickly so she had enough money to pay the mortgage. And she created her popular Bye Bye Boring bio on a dare from a friend. That book saved her bacon, and when she really needed to bring it home, and became the foundation for a successful online business that grew despite her discomfort with technology. When real life hit the fan, close friends and her own family in 2018, she and her husband, Steve, created the Life Goes On roadmap system for personal and financial information to help families escape drama, trauma, and chaos of finding crucial documents and personal financial information the worst of possible times. Guiding entrepreneurs and families to prepare for opportunities has been a common theme throughout Nancy's career. She's the first to say that challenging times can be the catalyst to step your finest hour of service if you can just shift your mindset and get to work. And this conversation is all about shifting your mindset, and it's all about, again, what you can do to pivot, prepare, produce, and prosper. Welcome, Nancy, and thank you so much for doing all the technology behind the scenes for us to be on Be Live now today. And I'm going to open it up by saying I've known Nancy, again, as I said, for almost 2 decades. And I followed all of her advice that she's provided on her free site, on her groups, things that she's always constantly giving away. And I have literally made probably a couple $100,000 on taking Nancy's advice. So listen up, everyone. I think Nancy's got some solutions coming down the pike as she's pivoting and I'm pivoting, and now we're in collaboration together with one another. So thank you, Nancy, for bridging us together today.
Well, it's my pleasure. And isn't it so fascinating and how amazing we can come together to turn on a dime and be of service? And as we were talking this morning, you were mentioning that learning how to do Be Live TV and sharing the message in a bigger way was like a tech glitch you hadn't quite figured out. So by taking imperfect action, I said, well, I've got a BeLive.tv account. How about I show you how to use it, and let's use it right now, and we can serve and help a lot of people, and you will gain a new skill that will open up the door for you to do great things going forward. And here we are just 20 minutes later making it happen. So it can be really that fast, right?
Yes, and like overnight, the world just discovered that Zoom and Zoom video is where people can connect to around the world. I mean, I know I'm using WhatsApp and other tools to stay in touch with my family and friends. And at the same time, those who rely on our in-person events and in-person interviews and other ways to connect that aren't 6 feet away are scrambling to figure out what they're going to do to have their, raise their voice and make an impact, which is what you're all about. So Nancy, what do you have to say about that?
Well, I know that a lot of people are struggling with their in-person events, whether they're charitable organizations that had to cancel their big event during prime fundraising season, or an author, expert, or entrepreneur who had a live event from which they were expecting to make millions in a couple of days. This is a serious consequence of what we're dealing with right now, that we have to get super creative in sharing our message with more of the right people. And I would just like to invite you to consider how you can share your message virtually through podcasts and radio shows, because you know what? There are thousands and thousands of podcast hosts out there who are looking for guests like you right this very minute. And if you can get on their podcast, it doesn't matter where you live. It doesn't matter the time zone. You can share your message with hundreds or thousands of people, and those links can live on indefinitely and bring people back to you right now. And so I am, people have been saying, what's been a silver lining of this challenge that we've been facing lately? And my answer to that is I'm getting my podcast guesting game on. And I'd really love to show you while we're live today how you can too, because what if you did a podcast a week and you reached thousands of people and they came rushing to go get on the phone with you, or to go get your free gift, or to join your Facebook group? There's so many ways you can connect and bring a mountain of people right back to you. And now is a really good time to learn.
Yeah. And for those of you who may not know, I was producing the live Women's Empowerment Summit that was scheduled for June 10 of this year. And although I was going to be doing virtual, it was really more of the side part of what I was going to be doing. And now I've had to cancel the live portion and turn all of my attention to virtual. And so I'm spending this time with you and my other things that I'm doing to get everything set up so that I can produce on a virtual level. So Nancy, what can people do, and what practical tips do you have that folks might be able to just take action on, like right now, just like you and I did in the last hour?
Well, alrighty then. If you want to get on a podcast, before you do, preparation is really important. You want to think about, what do you have to share in terms of a message that is timely, relevant, and of service to the podcast host right now? What will the audience learn as a direct result of you sharing your expertise? And be prepared with how you're going to introduce yourself so that the podcast host will have a wow reaction and his listeners will too. So before you go spraying and praying and saying to the world, I want to be on your podcast, please invite me in, that says absolutely nothing. What I recommend is that you think about who your ideal audience is. And I'm going to use you as an example, Bettina. You are all about women's empowerment. So you might do a Google search for podcasts for midlife women. And you might say top podcasts for midlife women. And you might narrow your focus to the top 10 podcasts for midlife women. And while you're sheltering in place and making the most of your time, you'll tune in to those podcasts to listen, to see if you have a message that would be relevant to that podcast. Because when you can show a podcast host that you've actually listened to the show and you enjoyed the most recent guest who talked about A, B, and C, which is the triggering event that caused you to get in touch because you thought you might be able to add something to that conversation, that podcast host is saying, wow, she listened to the show enough to know what we talk about and how we talk about it, and she has something new to add. And oh, by the way, she's made it so easy for me because she's quickly positioned herself as the expert on this particular aspect of women's empowerment. And she's even shared a couple of suggestions about the way the conversation can go that would make her job as the host so easy. When you do that, you can approach 5 podcast hosts today and you can suggest how you could add value to the program. And what do you know? They just might respond right away and say, I'd love to have you on the podcast. What's your schedule like? Can we do this on April 15th? In which case you've got yourself a gig. The neat thing about these podcast hosts is people have subscribed to be listeners to that podcast. So there's already an audience built in that is interested in that particular host. So you get to ride on the coattails of an already well-established audience that wants to know what you talk about. And what do you know? You just might get some new fans, followers, or clients as a direct result of sharing your expertise.
Well, that's a really fantastic idea, and not one that I thought about on my own. So thank you for that. You're always just so full of wonderful ideas. And what I'm taking away from this particular comment is that you've got to be focused. You've got to pick a subject matter. You've got to find what calls your heart and your passion, your spirit, and is of service. Right now, I think it's more important than ever to be of service. There's so many people that need what each of us might have. And I know you're really great at turning in one direction if you need be, turning into another direction if you need be. So what can you say about what you're doing now to pivot what you're doing in terms of podcasting? Because I know you have your own podcast too, and again, a wealth of resource to those who are listeners.
Well, I don't necessarily have a podcast, and I've actually made a deliberate choice not to have my own podcast because there's a lot of administration that's involved in that may not be my zone of brilliance. But I absolutely want to be on the podcasts of other people. And so here's another ninja tip. I'll get to what I'm doing later, but another ninja tip is, do you ever see, Bettina, that someone says, I was so honored to be invited to be on the ABC podcast. Here's a link where you can tune in to hear how we talked about A, B, and C. And you think to yourself, oh, well, that's nice. Congratulations. Well, what if you looked at it through a new filter and you said, she does something very similar to me for a very similar niche audience. I wonder if that podcast is an avenue for me to make my impact. Maybe I'll listen in. And then I'll be able to say to the host, my good friend Mary was just on your podcast and I love the conversation you had about whatever. I'm wondering if I might be able to add something to it. So earlier I said, go to a Google search and look for the top 10 podcasts that address women in midlife.
Yeah.
But what if the people in your own life are on podcasts and you ask them to introduce you to the host that they were on, or you go approach the host and mention that your good friend was recently on, and birds of a feather fly together, and let's soar higher together. Because I do this all the time, because in one of my businesses, I deal with folks that are dealing with getting their act together. And so I've got grief experts, and I've got people that help you prepare for their end of life, and I've got people that do all these really somber things, but they don't do what it is that I do. So I can play tag with all these people. And so it's like having a posse of folks. So I actually set up a Facebook group for all of my favorite competitors and said, we're all serving the same niche. What if we play tag with each other and invite each other to be guests on the podcasts and radio shows where we were featured? Because then the rising tide lifts all the boats.
Yeah, I love that. I love the collaboration model for sure.
And it's like, if you're like, I'll give you an example. There's a website called 60andMe, and it reaches 500,000 women who are 60 and better who see the next stage of their life as the best stage of their life. 500,000 women are going there every day. 60andme.com. So one of my friends, Jane Duncan Rogers, is a columnist for 60andMe. And I complimented her and said, wow, I love that you've got a column in 60andMe and you're reaching all these people. And she said, oh, I'm so happy that you've enjoyed my column. May I introduce you to the editor and you can be a columnist too?
Oh, wow.
And so I went ahead and went to the website and it says Write for Us. And I read the description of what is required to write for them. And I approached the editor and said, so-and-so, Jane Duncan Rogers is a good friend of mine, and she's been writing excellent content for your site. She suggested I might be a contributor as well. I'd love to respond to what is required in order to be a part of your network and submit an audition column so that I can earn that opportunity. Can we have a chat? And she wrote back and said, I love Jane. I love your content. Yes, we'd love for you to be a columnist. And so now I've written 3 columns for 60andMe, and they're getting tremendous engagement, and they're bringing inquiries and leads to me and my husband's business. And what do you know? Because as friends, we have to help each other. We lift as we climb. So
Yes.
keep that in mind is a great way to share your message. It's not just do a podcast, but if you're good with writing, can you write a blog for an audience where the audience is already built in and have that boomerang people back to you? Love that.
Yes, I totally love that. And, you know, we're all facing a new normal. And when things get tough, you know, the tough get going here. And how can we shift gears and find new ways to serve, grow, and profit? What do you say to that, Nancy?
Well, I'll share a couple of little personal asides that might make it really real for people, because right about now, people are panicking about how they're going to make money to pay their office, mortgage, their groceries. We're all on a stop, and it's an unprecedented time, and it is scary, and I get that, and I felt that too. In the Great Recession of 2008, remember that? The whole world seemed to stop. And I was running a public relations firm at the time with big name clients. And even though I was doing a really great job for them, they made the decision that PR wasn't such a high priority in that moment. They wanted to pay salaries for their team. They wanted to hold on for dear life to save themselves. So bottom line, my PR firm just crashed right with the economy. But we had just moved into a brand new home, and we couldn't sell the home that we left. And my rather generous income almost evaporated overnight. And I couldn't deal with the embarrassment that would be involved to put our house on the market just weeks after we sold it. So I found a new gear and thought, I've got to turn lemons into lemonade somehow. So a friend said, you're so good at helping people write their bios to attract clients and speaking opportunities. Why don't you write a book about it? And since I didn't have anything better to do, I wrote a book called Bye Bye Boring Bio, and I self-published it 3 weeks later. I told my newsletter list at the time, 1,085 names, hey, are you struggling to describe what you do, for who you do it for, and why it matters so you can get gigs right now? If that's your problem, go get my book. And I went and walked the dog, and when I came back, it was like sitting in front of a slot machine at Las Vegas. You have an order, you have an order, you have an order. And I couldn't believe it because I'm not tech savvy. None of this stuff was anything I knew anything about. I just was taking imperfect action to try to solve an urgent problem. And what do you know? I found one. And then I turned it into this whole empire of group training programs and private mentoring and speaking and all of that. I took a dare from a friend. So decide you're going to do something. Ask, aim high and amplify. Do something important. Ask a favor, ask for an opening, ask for an opportunity. Resist the temptation to quit, and execute. Because if you do nothing, nothing happens. And this gal, she said, I don't wallow. Right now, we could be wallowing. But there is something, Oprah would say, like, listen to the whispers. And this is another example. Listen to the whispers, because the whispers turn into a roar. And just like a week or two ago, I'm a member of Toastmasters. We all meet in person in a conference room where we practice our public speaking. And with the shutdown, it was, how are we going to get online fast so we can still get together? And so a whisper, I reached out to the president of Toastmasters and I said, would it help the organization if I did a video to train all of our members how to quickly use Zoom so we can connect days later? And she said, sure. I said, let's do a Zoom video and I will teach you in 15 minutes how you can be a pro at hello with Zoom. And then we can meet on Friday and never miss a beat. So I set up the Zoom call. I invited the president. We had a lovely chat. And then I decided to repurpose the video, believing that it would help other people. And now hundreds of people have watched that video, and people have I've asked permission. Can I share this with my Rotary Club in 3 states? Can I share this with my Toastmasters group across the world in countries that I've never stepped foot? So if you have a whisper and people are saying, can you help me with this? Can you help me with that? Ask yourself, if you can, what imperfect action can you take to serve and support people so they can get on board more quickly? Because I'll tell you something, people have seen that video and said, wow, that was so helpful. What else do you have? And boy, there's a lot of power under the tent over here. I want to share one more idea that was kind of funny, but this really happened. There are radio hosts and podcast hosts right now that are a little bit old school. They only meet with guests in their studio for production. Well, if they're in one of these countries or cities or states where we're in the 6 feet away scenario, they're not getting many guests in the studio. And this fella says to me, we only do guests in the studio. We haven't learned how to bring them online. There was a whisper. And so I said, I'm happy to get on a Zoom call with you and teach you how easy this can be. And if you find it as easy as I know you will, I'd love to be your first virtual guest. I asked, I dared, I decided I want to be on podcast. He's not comfortable doing the virtual thing. Let me ask him if I can train him how and open up a whole new world of opportunity for him. He's saying yes. I'm not resisting. We're going to go online. And now instead of dealing with people in his own state, he's going to get to talk to people across the country and maybe one day around the world. That is how quickly the world is changing. So if you think you have something to offer and that's responding to a whisper that could be a roar, don't worry about it being perfect. Just do it and see what magic can happen.
Yes, you are just one big gift, Nancy. I have to say, everything that comes out of your mouth, if people are listening and they're writing this stuff down and they actually apply all of this wonderful knowledge that you have, they're going to grow and they're going to thrive in this really challenging time. And I'm committed to really only talking in terms of positive things that people can do and embrace. I pray for the people that are suffering right now and are challenged in a way around life and death. And I obviously speak to them on a different level. But for those of us who are merely relegated to our homes and who are just, facing a challenge in our life, and it doesn't matter whether it was today, a year ago, or, 2 years ahead of us, whenever you have a challenge, you can rise up to the challenge, or you can pack your bags and, go back into your bedroom and sleep it off and see if it's going to go away. It's never going to go away. And, it's that ability to see your way here, to not panicking, trying to stay present in the present, not panicking, and asking yourself, how can I be of service? I use my gift abilities to bring something forth that others will benefit from. Able to also marry that passion with your, that's all the better, right? We all want to be in the position of using our talents and being able to processing. So you have always been a gift. I know you have some other gifts you want to share with us here. Tell us what you got.
Well, can I share one more pivot that I made that's really practical and profound and personal that would be really relevant to this conversation?
Absolutely.
So, it's not always wine, roses, and unicorns and rainbows that step up and show themselves. Sometimes life gets really hard, and we're dealing with one of those situations right now. Well, 2 years ago, life started hitting the fan for friends of mine that I loved very deeply, and also in my own family. And my business truly did get derailed because life got in my way. And we are all right now in a situation where something in real life has gotten in all of our ways, and it's so humbling. But in my case, 2 years ago, I was really good at writing bios for people, and I turned a whole business into helping people make their bios better. Like a lot of people laughed at me and thought, why are you doing that? Nobody's going to buy that. Nobody's going to do that. I had a feeling that I could really help people with that. So I didn't listen and I kept going. And what do you know? I got internet famous for it. I really did. So 2 years ago, when life was hitting the fan, women I knew whose lives were turned upside down by death, disability, divorce, their whole financial lives turned upside down. They've got their big girl panties around their ankles instead of their waist, and they're disempowered at the worst possible time. And I'll tell you something, I thought I could be next. And so I said to my husband, who happens to be a certified financial planner, it was Christmas time. And he said, what do you want for Christmas? I said, I don't care about Christmas gifts. What I really want is a roadmap to drive our whole life forward just in case I need to. And here again, it was a whisper. These people were having these horrible things happen to them. And I'm just a practical person that wants to prepare and pivot and do something positive to fill a need before it becomes a crisis. So we created the Life Goes On roadmap system for personal financial information organization. It was like the answer to a wound that was deeply felt. And I thought, I can't be the only person in the world that's struggling with this kind of stuff. So we brought this product to market actually 2 years ago today, our very first, and it was like,
happy anniversary.
But the world was whispering, and I thought, I better create something. So we did. Oh. And that's another example of pivoting, preparing for life, creating and finding a way to prosper. And here again, who cares about their bio? Nobody. All these are saying, oh, well, the bio doesn't matter. Well, my bank account told me that a bio really does matter, and I needed to trust my gut. So bottom line is there's millions of people right now that have pulled all the weeds they can. They've organized their sock drawer. They have cleaned out their pantry. They've looked for all kinds of work from home projects that they can do to navigate the shelter in place order. But I would venture to say a whole lot of them have not organized their personal financial information and crucial documents just in case life turns on a dime. And if there was ever a time to do that, now would be the time.
Now is the time, yes. And, I've been working on my own version of this, and I'm ready for your Life Goes On roadmap, because I know that there are people out there that have something similar to this, where they have their passwords and they have their special information. I even have, a check written out to my son in the event of my death. I have a picture to go in my obituary. I keep one in here. I mean, it's called in the event of incapacitation or death. But I'd rather have a roadmap that wasn't written in my chicken scratch, that maybe some people might not be able to even read through, that was much more organized. And I too have, been facing, somber times when my dad passed and he never expected to go, and my mom had to deal with a bunch of stuff that was unexpected knowledge that was taken with him. I had that same thing happen when I helped my friends to pass, and had to settle their affairs for them. And the first one, of course, difficult than the second, because I had knowledge. But after I've taken a look at what's the content in your Life Goes On roadmap, I'm amazed at how intuitive it is in terms of capturing all of the knowledge that needs to be there when someone other than yourself is responsible. I happen to be a single woman, and so I don't have someone that's watching my comings and goings and even my operations for my business. So everything I do, if it's not written down, will be lost if my mind or my body isn't working for me. So I think this is a wonderful solution that you created in different times, but it's probably more relevant today than it was relevant even 2 years ago.
Well, isn't it interesting when we listen? And so I guess as a practical suggestion for those who are watching live or by replay, and please, your comments are welcome, your kudos, your likes, hearts, and shares, so welcome. But what whispers are calling to you that you never had opportunity or occasion to bring to life? And could now be the time for that whisper to turn into a roar that could be your finest hour? Give that some thought. because there could be a brilliant idea that will allow you to pivot and serve and profit and make the difference that only you can make. Last night I was watching the news, and it was it's so somber, but they were projecting that as many as 100,000 people could pass from this current scenario we find ourselves in. And none of us wants to believe that it's anyone we're close to or anyone we know. It's all going to happen to someone else. But if it does happen to you, can you open up that person's phone and get access to their friends and family to share what just happened? Can you access their investment accounts so that you can take care of whatever needs to be taken care of? Are you going to be the rightful beneficiary of whatever's left behind? Or are you going to be wife number 3 wishing that wife number 2 had been written out of the will because someone forgot to do it? There's a lot of these kinds of things that we can all be tending to now. And life is what happens while we're making other plans. And if you are truly taking steps to succeed in life and work and everything else that you do, take one more step and organize your life so that you can be a blessing to your family no matter what happens tomorrow. And I just can't say enough about how empowering it is to be able to drive life forward and not be a passenger a moment longer. And I hope that you're inspired to want to do that, because that's the whisper that has become a big roar that could serve people around the world and really make a profound difference. And that's really the flag I'm waving now.
Yeah, actually my number one priority outside of over cleaning and moving things around and organizing and decluttering and all of that, my number one priority is to get my roadmap written down in one place where people can access it no matter what. So thank you so much. And I know you have some other gifts that folks can tap that are free, that you have created over the time. And if you can share a little bit about that, that would be good news for everybody too.
Thank you. So if I've ignited your excitement about being on podcasts and other virtual platforms to share your message, the Sizzling Speaker Sheet gift template will help you prepare your message so that it's ready to rock on a podcast. If you prepare your message before you go, they're going to say yes to you a whole lot more. So in the comments below, we'll share the link so you can access the Sizzling Speaker Sheet gift template. And I promise you, 10,000 or more people have already come before you to sing the praises of this free and practical tool. If you make your message relevant for today's challenges and opportunities, you will have doors open so you can share your message with a much wider audience. So that's the Sizzling Speaker Sheet gift template. And the second gift I have is what I'm going to show it to you. It's called the Get Your Act Together Getting Started template. And this is a really useful tool that will help you quickly put into buckets what you need to organize in terms of your household and your life and your finances so that you can get started on the process of getting your act together. And when you go get this, share it with everyone in your family and your closest friends, because this is the Get Your Act Together organizing task that needs to happen now. It's urgent. I mean, this isn't something you want to put off, people. And so those are the two gifts I have, and I hope that they will become blessings to you and everyone you love and all the people that will soon be hearing your message. And as I said, life is what happens while we're making other plans. If we want to pivot, if we want to produce, if we want to prosper, we have to get ready to go before we get to the show, whatever show that's going to be.
That's right. Thank you so much for sharing all of your wisdom. It's been just a true blessing to have you in my life for nearly 20 years. But who's counting?
But we haven't changed a bit.
No, we have not. Not the soul of us, anyway.
Well, thank you for being so generous in inviting me to have this conversation. And now that you've used BeLive.tv in this manner, what do you think? And are you glad you learned?
I think this is fantastic. You solved a problem that I was having producing. I wanted to produce live, but I was having technical difficulties using the Zoom platform because of the freezing up and all of that kind of stuff. And so this is a great solution, and one that I'll be able to use very easily, and in collaborating with some of the speakers that are going to be on my virtual platform on June 10, 2020. That'll be like an all-day telethon. It's going to go all day long into the night, and I hope folks will join me on June 10, 2020, starting bright early at 8 o'clock.
Will you be putting a link to that in the comments below as well?
It will come later, but you can at this point you can be a part of what I'm up to by joining any number of my groups. One of the groups I have featured right now is called "It's a Small World After All," and we're all in this together. And so stay tuned there. There's also the Women's Empowerment, Empowerment Marketplace, and those are both wonderful places to go and keep in touch with me through Facebook.
Very good. Well, in terms of parting words, I have one thing that's kind of fun. Don't let the tech take you out.
Yes.
Don't let the tech take you out. If you have a friend who knows how to do something that you want to learn, dare to ask to be shown the way and see what blessings might come your way because of it. Now's the time to be connecting, daring to ask, resisting the temptation to quit and to get going, because a new normal will be about very shortly, and those who rise up are going to be rewarded in all the beautiful ways, and those who put their heads in the sand will have their own consequences. And given the choice, you know what my bias is.
Right. And for those of you who think you need to be perfect, let that go, because it's more for us to just be imperfect. These are not the times to seek for perfection. We're all in this together. It is a small world after all. Thank you, Nancy, for joining me, and for your wonderful comments and wisdom. I so appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you. And hope that you will join us both again in either our separate worlds or in our together world. Again, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye for now.